Welcome to Kaplan Financial and myself, Mark Baines. Before we start getting into detail into each of our sets of notes, the subjects and our learning points, just a little bit about myself. First of all, I'm a senior lecturer here at Kaplan Financial. I'm an expert in business finance, not only at this level, but also the capstone level as well. I've taught many courses on finance, strategy, involving lots of qualifications. ACCA I've taught, CIMA, CPR Australia, so I've got lots and lots of experience in the actual teaching. In Hong Kong, I'm the #1 preferred lecturer, not only for QP Module 12, but also the capstone, and I actually teach all of the Big Four clients, and I've done that for over 15 years. The reason why they come to me for their studies is because of my prize-winning status. I get many prize winners, also my pass rates as well. So you can see over the 20 years here at Kaplan Financial, I've taught many students. For us in Module 12, here's what I do. First of all, I custom write, I tailor-make my notes for each and every exam diet, focusing on the important syllabus areas and especially on the application. You're going to find that application is very important to scoring high marks and passing Module 12. What I also do is I handpick what I think are the best questions for each of the exam's areas, and I also provide you with my own recommended solutions. That allows you to better understand and learn how each subject area, what we should be writing, what we should be doing to actually pass the actual exam. If you want to have a little look at the official solutions, you can do so that as well. You'll find the official solutions are not so well constructed. So this is where I really think that my passes and prizes come from, showing students better how to score marks and pass this actual exam. We're not going to be looking at each and every topic in lots and lots of detail. What I'm trying to deliver is some exam focus. I'm trying to narrow the scope so that you can study in the most efficient and effective way. The learning pack, that is lots of detail. That's about 1,300 pages. You will find that my exam focus notes are around about 500 pages. So my notes always is the priority. It's what you are focusing your study on first of all. And then I'm also going to suggest just having a little brief look through the learning pack. It is the official guide, but of course my notes come first. This is giving you the foundation for Module 12, so my notes are the major focus. Hopefully you're going to see over the next few hours, days and weeks as you study, I'm breaking down the difficult financial theories alongside the important performance and strategic models needed to pass the M12 exam. So you'll see that my set of notes are broken down into 5 sets. This first set here, we're going to start off with the section A style questions. Those are chapters 1, chapter 2, 15 and 8. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to rearrange the learning pack order. If you want to rearrange the notes back in order, you can do that, of course, by taking out the sections and rearranging that yourself. I really want you guys to be listening to these videos. I'm going to give you lots and lots of important advice. I know there's many hours to get through, but the good news is we're starting early, and this is what you guys need to be doing here. Now, my set of notes, as I mentioned earlier, are exam focused. I'm trying to give you what's important, and what's important from your side is you must learn each and every page. I have to think very hard each exam diet, what to add in to my set of notes, but also what to take out of my set of notes. Otherwise, they just get bigger and bigger each exam diet. And of course, if they're too big, students then will lose this exam focus. So please pay attention to the videos and each page. If you know and understand each page in my set of notes, you can get an extremely good pass. But what I will say is that maybe my notes won't cover the full exam, yeah? Maybe they will test things they've never tested before, or maybe a rare area. So what I also want you guys to be doing as well is just having a little skim read through the learning pack. No need to read it from cover to cover in great detail, but look out for tipped areas, or maybe areas at university that you were not so strong at. Make sure you pay attention to those areas there. And by a little skim read through, if they are examining or testing something for the first time and you've read it in the learning pack, then maybe you can get some marks on that very rare or obscure area. So I suggest also have a little skim read through. I'm going to talk about the hot topics in this introduction and the tipped areas in a second. Let's get back now to my set of notes. So you'll see in each of my set of notes, we're going to be dividing up here. This is the learning pack chapters. So this section A style questions on these first few learning pack chapters shouldn't be too technical, but if you've got any questions throughout, you've got here my email address there as well. So any questions, you can use that. I much prefer you guys to be sending me questions as you get them. Don't save them till the last week before the actual exam, because I've got many students. I've got all the Big Four, I've got the public students as well, not only Module 12, but I've got over 1,000 students for Capstone as well. So send me the questions as you get them. Let's now get into our business finance, a little introduction just here. First of all, it's called business finance, but actually it's made up of lots and lots of different areas. So we've got subjects, for instance, like strategic management. This is the area we're going to start off with chapter 1 and chapter 2 in a second. We've got ethics as well later in this set 1 of notes, and we've got performance also as well. This set 1 is not too technical. It's when we start moving on into set 2 through to set 5, we then have the more technical areas. So these are on the financial management areas such as risk, financing, and investment. And what you're facing in the actual exam is this. First of all, in section A, you will get one large case study. This is 50% of the actual exam, and it largely involves this set 1 set of notes. Strategic areas, ethical performance management areas, that's what this set 1 set of notes is actually for. And then in section B, you will find the other half of the exam is made up of 3 or 4 mini case studies. And what these mini questions or mini scenarios tend to focus on is the more technical areas of financial management, and those we're going to find a little bit more trickier. Those are going to be set 2 through to set 5. Yeah, so as I said before, this set 1 shouldn't be that bad. Doesn't matter section A or section B. This open book exam requires 100% application. You need to use the case-specific scenario, facts, and issues. Now, in the last exam, we're going to find out that HRCPA wasn't very happy. There was a distinct lack of application. Very important that you were using the scenario to answer. In this actual exam, you're going to find there is lots and lots of written questions. Around about 70% of the exam is written, around about 30% is calculation. And if you go back and have a little look at the pass rates over the years, this was in QP Module B. This is around about 45%. Then for the new Module 12, this dropped, this average, and you will see in the last exam, this dropped down to 16%. Now, there was nothing really odd or special about the actual exam. I actually thought the exam questions in that last exam in December weren't too bad. I didn't think they were too tricky, but I think HRCPA, they're trying to give a signal out to the market that copying notes, copying materials, this is no longer acceptable. They want accountants that can provide advice, that can apply their knowledge to the scenario, using the facts and using the issues. So I want to go through the examiner's report in a second to show you more about what HRCPA are wanting from you guys. The good news is that all of you, of course, listening to this video, you can all pass this paper, but what you need to be doing here is having lots of focus and willing to do some hard work. And as a minimum, this is what you should be thinking about before the actual exam. We, in these videos, are going to be covering the whole syllabus. Questions actually are not too deep in Module 12, but what's important is gaining a width of knowledge, understanding the whole syllabus, and that's what the course is going to be designed to do. So please listen to these videos. Don't skip the videos. You will skip important information. Yeah, so start early, listen to the videos, revise properly, comprehensively, try to understand the theories behind the knowledge, and maybe how parts of the syllabus relate to one another. We're going to introduce at the end of this video the big picture, so we'll have a little look at all of the syllabus, and we'll look at how syllabus areas relate to one another. Often in questions, there's questions cutting across all the syllabus areas, going from chapter 1 to chapter 8, or business valuation and a merger acquisition. We're going to be seeing that those are going to be some tipped areas in a second. And what's important to get these application skills is this. You need to practice a range of past exam questions, because passing Module 12, there it is again. It's all about the application of the knowledge to the scenario-specific facts and issues. And the only way you're going to get these application skills is practice, 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 practice. You're going to see in our first chapter, chapter 1, when we move on to our very first tuition, I'm going to leave you guys mostly to practice the questions. I'll start you off, I'll point you in the right direction, I'll show you the application skills, but I want you guys to practice, practice, practice. And here's what's very, very important in Module 12. You will find that in Module 12, every scenario is different. You never get the same scenario twice. Every question in Module 12 is different. So to pass, what you need to do is you need to write an answer specific to that scenario. And time after time after time, they've said this in the examiner's report, that if you copy directly from the learning pack or past exam solutions, that will not score marks. That will not pass module 12. Now, I do know that in the other modules, you do get some marks for writing out the learning pack. In tax, for instance, if there's a tax rule or regulation, you may well get some marks for writing that out. In module 12, it's totally different to the other modules. If you are writing theory out, you will score 0 marks. You have to apply the theory, the knowledge at all times, using the specific issues and facts in the scenario. So what I want to do in a second across here on the next page, you're going to find we've got here, this is the examiner's report here from the last exam from the December 2022. I want to highlight that and show you again some of the problems that HRCPA were reporting in that examiner's report. Next, we've got many syllabus areas. This is open book exam, so of course if you need to find things, make sure that you know all your materials very, very well. Use dividers, marked or index content so you can find areas very, very quickly. But I want you not to treat your study and exam like open book. That is a wrong approach. You should be treating your study and exam approach just like you had at university. Treat it like closed book. You're going to see in the examiner's report in a second, they're complaining that students are not spending enough time answering. And I think the reason why students are not doing that is because they're being distracted by having lots of materials, searching through materials, trying to find things. Well, that is scoring 0 marks. You've got to spend more time writing and answering to score the marks and pass module 12. Also, don't try and question spot too closely. We're going to go through some hot topics in a second. These come from the module preparation seminars, but these topics we're going to see, they're only covering around about 65% of the exam. 35% will be a surprise, and we need to make sure we cover everything. So don't try and question spot too closely. Also, pay attention to your handwriting. In some recent examiners' reports, they're reporting that they can't read what students are writing down. No need to worry about grammar and spelling, but they are noticing that some students, because they're not used to writing for 3 hours, in the first hour, okay, no problem. Second hour, not so sure. And then in the final hour, they just can't read the writing. Some examiners say it looks like a spider has walked through some ink and walked across the page. They can't read it. So remember, just pay attention to your handwriting for them to give you marks. They need to know what you are writing down. And finally, HRCPA suggests reading more business and financial press. Certainly you can do that. Recently here, we're having all the banks melting down, so that's an interesting point at the moment. But I think more focused and better for you guys to give you inspiration and confidence to provide advice in this actual exam. What I want you to do this weekend is Google Dragon's Den. This is on YouTube, and this is a much more fun and better way of getting into the concepts of QP Module 12. Dragon's Den, it's a BBC-made production. It's been going for many, many years. And what you have is people with business ideas, strategies, coming into the room, and then the dragons have got the money, the finance, and they're asking them lots of questions about the strategy. So we've got things like strategy, we've got business performance, there's financing, and there's a lot of business valuation. These are all core areas of QP Module 12. So this is a very easy and fun way of getting into all of the concepts that are going to be important in your future studies. So definitely do that. Dragon's Den is a very, very good one. I'll start you off just there. Let's now get into this December 2022 examiner's report, because as we mentioned earlier, the pass rate was very, very low. 16% is the lowest ever for QP Module 12. So here's the examiner's report. First of all, you're going to see they go into Section A, making some general comments. There's also here Section B with some general comments as well. Let's start first of all with Section A. So what they said was, the overall performance in this section was not satisfactory. Candidates are weak in calculations. Now that's quite surprising. I haven't seen that an awful lot in the examiner's reports. Calculation is just really knowledge. So we need to understand the calculations, why we are putting certain numbers in. and also labeling calculations. That's crucial, that's important as well, showing your method of approach. But I'm not so worried about calculations with you guys. This is the concern. It's the application. They said candidates were weak in application of theory and frameworks to answer the questions. Moreover, candidates are strongly advised to read the case and question requirements carefully before answering the question. Now, reading the requirements. The most important thing in your exam is the requirement. It's the most important thing. Because if you don't answer directly, how many marks will you score? 0. You in the exam need to answer what the examiner is asking you. And what you're going to find in this QP Module 12 is that often the requirements can be 4 or 5 lines. They are very, very long. Sometimes there can be multiple things they want you to do. There can be multiple verbs. They keep on saying blah, 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 and, blah, 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 and. So most important thing in this exam is the requirement. And then they say this: merely copying materials from the learning pack without application should be avoided. They've said many, many times in QP Module 12, if you copy, if you just talk generally, you will score 0 marks. You have to apply throughout. All the questions require application. Candidates should also manage their time wisely so they can complete all of the exam questions timely. I don't think that's a time management problem. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's a search and copy issue. Searching through notes, copying stuff takes a lot of time. Don't do that. Spend much more time answering, scoring marks, writing things down in your solution book. And you don't need to have the same answer as the examiners. If you watch some Dragon's Den, this will give you inspiration and confidence to provide advice. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for your arguments, they're looking for advice, they're looking for that application. Very, very important here for this Module 12. We've got similar problems here as well in Section B. So they said Section B again, performance not satisfactory. Again, candidates weak in both calculations, but again, there's that application providing advice. Candidates displayed weak analytical skills, especially providing financial implications in the various scenarios. So again, there's this generalization, copying, and not applying the scenario. Let me show you question A. This is question 1 part A, 10 marks. Here was the comments. It says this question required candidates to apply the most suitable strategic model to conduct a business environment analysis and then report the findings to the board. Most of the candidates were able to use the Pestel model. So in this exam, they won't tell you often the model they want you to use. They want you to think, well, what is the most suitable model given what they want me to do? And so correctly, students found the most suitable model, Pestel, but here was the problem. It says they used Pestel model, but a lot of candidates, it says, were not able to identify and discuss short-term and long-term impacts to the group. So that was part of the requirement, and students completely ignored that requirement. Also, it says some candidates tend to copy materials directly from the learning pack. They lost marks as a result. Overall, this question was not answered satisfactorily. Well, let me show you the question. When we move on in our chapter 1 in a second, here we've got the question. This is if you turn, this is to page, this is 1-11. Here you've got in chapter 1 the actual question you can see from December. This is 2022. And what I've done here is I've just extracted the important information from the case. You're going to see that as we go from practice lots of questions in chapter 1, rather than publish each of the sections as 2 pages of case information, I just extract what was important for the question. Let's have a little look here at the scenario first of all. So what they gave you in section A was a restaurant group that's operating a few reputable Chinese restaurants in Hong Kong. It's well known for dine-in cuisines, high quality, and they charge premium prices. So a scenario all you guys will be very, very familiar with. They then said despite strong growth for the years, SRG's revenue and profitability have dropped quite seriously. Look, 50%, 80%. Why? Because the government has imposed stringent rules on the number of customers and dine-in due to the COVID pandemic. So we're all experienced, we all know this in Hong Kong. Lots of tight rules meant that, restaurants couldn't operate at full capacity. So this was a big problem. Let's turn down to the requirement. So here it was. It said, as the pandemic has changed the business environment for SRG, it's the board of directors that want to know and understand the change in impacts in the short and long term. So it's the directors that want to understand this. What you're the CFO. As a public accountant, you have been asked to apply the most suitable strategic model. This is to conduct what? A business environment analysis. So when we get into chapter 1, you're going to find the best model to investigate the business environment, and environment analysis is PESTEL. So we were using PESTEL and reporting the findings then to the board of directors. Now, in these scenarios, the examiner works very, very hard to put relevant facts and issues in. So look, you can see here, it's the government that's imposed stringent rules on the number of customers and dining hours. So this would be political, P of our PESTEL. And of course, in the short term, we can see the problem. Revenues have gone down, profits have gone down. In the long term, if there's a ban on dining, that could be even worse. But maybe in the long term, we wouldn't expect the pandemic to last forever and ever and ever. What is the long term? Maybe something like 5 years or longer. We'd expect eventually Hong Kong and the rest of the world to move on, and certainly that is what has happened. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the short term, I'm talking about the long term with reference to the government and its intentions. So they've put that into the scenario for you to use. They'd also put this into the scenario as well, that the government has provided additional subsidies. So this is great. As a restaurant business, we've got big overheads. There's things like the staff, the rental costs. So this would be a great help in the short term, the government providing subsidies. The only problem is that, of course, in the long term, we can't rely on those subsidies because surely they will be dropped. As we move out of the pandemic, those will be dropped. So all we need to do here is using PESTEL, write up and discuss short-term, long-term. Look, you can see politically, the government has imposed very stringent rules restricting customers, dining times of restaurants. This will affect the revenue in the short term. Government also provides subsidies, so this is a great help in the short term. The threat is, of course, that either the government further strengthens regulations or reduces subsidies. That could be a problem in the long term. These stringent regulations are unlikely to be enforced forever and ever and ever, and so there will be an opportunity here once they are loosened or once they've been removed in the long term. So you can see here, to score the 10 marks, we was having to go through each of the PESTEL areas and discuss and identify short-term and long-term impacts. You can now see that students directly copying the learning pack, you won't find COVID-19, pandemic, you won't find it in the learning pack, you won't find it in my set of notes. You have to apply the model directly to the scenario. So you really need to get out of the habit of searching and copying. Searching and copying is a waste of time. You won't pass Module 12. You have to have confidence to be able to say, well, I think this is the problem. I think the company should do this. You need to provide advice. You need to apply. You need to answer the question directly. And that's using the specifics here from the case information. So be aware of that. As I said before, this 16% pass rate was the lowest we ever had. This was in the December exam. And as I said earlier, I don't think it was a particularly difficult exam. I think HICPA now, they're getting much, much tougher on this copying in Module 12. And what they're trying to do is send a signal out to students that this is no longer going to be acceptable. To pass this actual exam, what is the pass rate? Well, they never talk about it's 50% or 60% to pass. They play around with the pass rates. So in this actual case here, it wasn't 50% to pass. In fact, this 50% to pass, it's a myth. You won't find this 50% pass rate in the learning pack. You won't find it online on the website. They play around. And here, I think they were playing games here to send a strong signal out. I would expect in your exam the pass rate to be back up to where it was before, maybe 35%, something like this for your actual exam. Let's move on in this examiner's report. So finally here on the next page, there's some conclusions, there's some recommendations. So overall, the performance of candidates was poor. They say to better answer the questions, candidates need to be familiar with the technical and practical knowledge. So this is what this course is going to be designed to do, to give you the exam-focused knowledge all the important points, all the important subjects. They're all in my set of notes as we go through from page to page. And then what you need to be able to do is apply them to solve the questions and carefully using the case information. They keep on in this examiner's report talking about copying from learning packs without application. This is not suggested. This is not the whole of the exam panelist report. I have put some dots and cut a lot of this out. I'm just trying to give you guys the main feeling for the examiner's report here. Copying now has been mentioned a number of times, and what they recommend is this. Candidates should strengthen their ability to provide sound financial implication analysis backed by solid calculations and providing relevant arguments. Now, all of this inspiration and confidence is coming from a couple of areas. First of all, you need the knowledge. We, before the actual exam, are going to gain all this knowledge. So please listen to these videos early and get on top of the knowledge at an early stage. Then for the application, we need to be practicing questions. That's how we're going to get these application skills. We're going to go through lots and lots of question practice in each of our chapter areas. And finally, that Dragon's Den. That Dragon's Den, try and immerse yourself in strategy and strategic thinking. And that Dragon's Den, honestly, it's a fun program. It's an interesting program. It will give you the inspiration and confidence to provide relevant advice. Also, they talk here about the time management. I don't think it's time management. I think the problem is that students are walking into the exam thinking, it's open book. It's all right. I can look for that. I can search for that. No, you're not going to have time to search. Know the knowledge, know the theory, know the models before the actual exam. Spend more time writing and answering. And finally, they even talk here that candidates should also practice past exam questions. This is to strengthen the analytical and writing skills here, essential to the Module 12 exam. Well, that's what we're going to be doing. Lots and lots. I'm going to leave you with lots of questions to practice. We'll start them off together, point in the right direction, and then I want you guys to finish the questions off and practice. And what we're going to be using is application skills. So these application skills are over here on the next page. We're going to be talking about what to do during the actual exam. These are our exam strategies. We're going to be talking about case study techniques. But just before we do that, there are some particular here hot topic areas. So each exam sitting, HRCPA puts together these seminars. And so here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chapters. There's an extremely high chance that they will test these chapter areas. So make sure not only you've understood my set of notes, but also just have a little read through as well in detail the learning pack. Because the learning pack, as I said before, that goes through in greater detail. My set of notes don't cover everything. If they did, they wouldn't be exam focused. My set of notes are the priority. They come first. You must understand each and every page and then go back to the learning pack and you can look up some more additional areas that are being covered there. Areas that maybe have never been tested or are considered quite rare. So I want to come back to these in a second and start thinking about tips at the end of this video because I want to add a few more chapters in to these ones just here. Before we do that though, let's start thinking about these application skills. So what's important here to score extremely good marks and pass is this analyze, design, and implement. And we need to do this. Doesn't matter whether it's the large case study section A or whether it's the mini case studies in section B. All of those require careful consideration and application. So what's important, first of all, is the requirements. But just hold on 1 second. Before you read the requirements, just read the first paragraph of the case study. This will give you an idea of the business, the industry, and an introduction. So when we just looked at that last exam question earlier, first thing I did was to look at the scenario. We had a restaurant, dine-in, high-quality dining experience. Once we've read that, then you can read the requirements very, very carefully. And as you're reading that requirement carefully, you can start thinking around a similar business or industry that you know. And as we read the requirements carefully, there are 3 things that we need to look for. First of all, try and identify the verb or the verbs in the requirements. These tell you what the examiner wants you to do. Explain, evaluate, recommend. Be on the lookout because often in these QP Module 12 questions, there can be more than one thing to do. So there could be several verbs in the requirement. Calculate and explain, evaluate and recommend. Once you've then done that, next then you're looking for some keywords. So there'll be some kind of hint or tip as to what the area is about. Is it chapter 1? Is it chapter 8? And maybe the models or the tools. So the keywords tell you what to do it on or about. And from those keywords, you should then be able to identify the relevant models, tools, and theories from your course knowledge. So that's the most important thing. What is the examiner asking you to do? You must answer directly. Yeah, do not copy. We need to answer exactly what we're being asked to do. Next then, we need to analyze the scenario. Now, just before you go into a deep read of the case scenario, first, just a minute or so, just have a little skim read through. This will give you an idea of what the case is about, maybe some main issues, maybe even the requirements. You can start to break this large question down into smaller areas. You might spot things. For instance, maybe some calculations, numbers. That could be for question 2 or question 3. So maybe from the skim read, you can turn this large case scenario into smaller questions. Then, before you do the big detailed read, most important thing again is those requirements. So read the requirements a second time. So okay, what is it again I need to do? Read them slowly, read them carefully. They are the most important thing. And then finally, you need to spend 15 to 20 minutes. Don't rush it. Take your time. Actively read the case study in detail. And when I mean actively read, I mean making notes on the question paper as you are going down. So for instance, if we had Pestel, we'd be thinking about, okay, that's the government, that's the rules, that's political, that's talking about the economic issues, maybe some social trends. So as you're reading through, you're trying to add value. So when you write up your answer, it's a lot better structured. We're going to find there are professional marks for writing your answer in a more logical way. So this is the time to read, make notes on the paper as you go down. Then once you've done that, don't start immediately to write up your answer. We need to design. We need to think before we actually write. And there are 2 very important major things here you should be thinking about. First of all, the most important one, the requirements. What is the examiner asking you to do? And then the second most important thing, this is what the examiner's written to help you. So you should find that in that scenario, there are specific facts and issues. The scenario is not a random scenario the examiner's cut and paste from an internet. No, the examiner has worked very, very hard to put things in that scenario. And what your job is to pick those things out and use them to support the arguments, support the ideas, support the advice that you were providing. So we just saw earlier about that restaurant and the government rules and the government subsidies. He put that in because he was wanting you to use those. So 2 major things. What is he asking you to do? And what is he giving you to use? What is he giving you so that you can apply, you can score the marks in your answer and pass Module 12, no problem. Now, normally in Module 12, that's enough. The requirement, and then what is he giving you to do? But in the capstone now, capstone's higher level, and I thought I'd bring this into Module 12 as well, because in some questions, they're asking things where actually you can't find a model. There's no tools, there's no theory to use. If we think about in the boardroom, that's a realistic scenario. You know, at the end of qualification, once you are CPA, you could be in the boardroom as the chief financial officer, the CFO, and you need to provide some input, some advice. That's not going to come from a textbook. It's going to come from things like what you feel, what you think, maybe experience. So if you're in the actual exam and they're asking you something where you're not sure, there's no model, tool, or theory, just try and provide some practical, relevant advice using the facts and the issues. Leave nothing blank in this actual exam. It's better to write something than write nothing. Yeah, as long as you're using the scenario, as long as you're giving some kind of practical, relevant advice, the markers will know that these types of questions can be very, very tricky. As long as you're writing something sensible, you will be scoring marks for these parts as well. So be on the lookout for those. They are especially in the next level, at the capstone level, where they're trying to test, you know, these more out of the box, thinking out of the box type questions. And then finally, we need to write up our answer. So this is implementation. This is implementing, writing our answer to maximize the actual marks. First of all, we're going to see that formats are important here. They can ask for report, memo, email formats. We'll cover those as we get the questions in the next few videos. And relate your answer to the case scenario. So try and use the facts, the issues, the names. So you will see in my solutions, that's what I'm doing. I'm using the facts in the scenario, the issues, the names of the companies, or the names of the stakeholders involved. Work on each short sentence for 1 mark. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to discuss a range of issues by doing this. Giving evidence from the scenario. So we saw the government regulations, and then explain your point. So what is the impact? What's the effect? Is it short term? Is it long term? Next point, let's give some evidence. There's the subsidies. Explain your point. What's the impact? Is it short term? Is it long term? Don't just talk about Pestel. You need to use your time wisely. So we have to talk about economic, social, technological, as well as the other items as well. And then each time you're doing that, leave a blank line between the paragraphs, make the answer easy on the eye, easier to award marks. So you're going to see in my solutions that I leave lots and lots of space here. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to signal to the marker that you want to mark for each of these short sentences you are using. So that's what you're trying to communicate to the marker. Try to avoid not writing essay. So don't write big blocks of text. That is not recommended. What the marker wants to see is a smart answer, lots of nice short paragraphs, using the scenario, using the names, and of course answering directly what they are asking you. For calculations, normally in the Module 12 exam, using all the figures, it's quite rare to provide you meaningless or irrelevant information. You'll normally find that all the information you're being given needs to be used and answered. And what's important here is that one, labeling calculation. So if it's 10 marks, you don't get 10 marks for the final answer, you get 10 marks throughout. The method, the approach. For the mark to give you those marks, you need to label the numbers so the mark can see the approach you've been taking. That is how we score the marks on the calculations. It's not about the final number. It doesn't matter if you get the final number wrong. If you've made one mistake and the markers can follow your approach and your method, you'll only lose that 1 mark where you made the mistake. So very important labeling. And if there's something missing, so if you're having difficulty on a particular part of a question, sometimes they will deliberately miss something in the scenario. What they want you to do is make some assumptions. They want you to demonstrate the application. They want you to get towards the end of your answer. So don't give up if there's something missing. Put something in, I'm assuming this, try to get to the end of your answer, and by getting to the end of each of the questions, then you are making sure that you are being assessed out of the exam's full 100 marks. Very important, again, that you do that. Be strict with the timing. Once time's up, move on. And I would also answer the exam in order parts as well. So don't do part B and then go back to part A. You've sometimes found that these exams are set to be answered in order. So maybe your answer in an earlier part is required in a later part. You don't have to do section A first. You can start off with a shorter mini case scenario, section B first. That's up to you, yeah? Section B tends to be more technical, but if there's a question maybe in section B that you have confidence in, you could do that question first, and that will give you greater confidence at the beginning of the exam. Otherwise, if they look quite technical, section B, I wouldn't do those first. Maybe start with section A. Section A tends to be more strategic, performance, ethical areas. And so this set 1, as we said, this shouldn't be too technical. This set 1, you're going to find section B, they tend to be much more technical on the more financial management areas. And then finally, don't leave any question parts blank. To ensure a good chance of passing, you need to expose yourself to the exam's full 100 marks. The golden rules to passing Module 12 here are this. Application, application, application. And be aware that you do not need to have the same solution as the examiners. You don't have to have the same conclusions. You can completely disagree with the official solution so long as you are backing up your arguments with reasons why. Doesn't matter about your final recommendation, doesn't matter about your final conclusion, it's how you arrived at that recommendation, how you arrived at that conclusion. So you might be arguing that no, don't launch new products, we should be thinking about the markets. The examiner's answer could be the complete opposite. Here's the advice they give to markers. They say, as the examination simulates real-life situations based on case studies, suggested solutions may not cover all the valid points. In the actual examination, candidates will be awarded points for valid answers that may not be covered in the suggested solution, but which nevertheless are relevant to the question. So as long as you are answering what the examiner is asking you to do, we said very early on that's important, answer directly, you don't have to have the same points. You don't have to have the same arguments, as long as the points you are making are relevant to the question, relevant to the scenario. That's all we need to do to score the marks. Also, out of the 4 QP modules, Module 12 relies least on the learning pack. Time and time again, they say students gain no marks, waste time copying from the learning pack. So what you guys need to do differently is this. It's all about looking for those keywords. So what does he want us to do? And then the second major thing, what is he given us to use? And then applying your knowledge directly to that exam-specific circumstance, using those issues and using those facts. Let's finish off this little introduction here with a few more important items in our introduction. When we get into question practice, you're going to see that HICPA has got an official verb list. You're expected to understand the skills that are being tested. We've got 3 levels. We've got the foundation level. You'll then see on the next page we've got an intermediate level before finally an advanced level. And also you're going to find in your actual exam there are professional marks as well. So here you can see on page 9, let's have a little look here at these professional marks. So for some exam questions, you'll see a little note saying something like this. Maximum 2 marks for communication skills, 2 marks for analytical skills. So below, this is how they award these actual marks for these professional marks. You can see, as well as communication skills and analytical skills, they can ask you a number of things. We've got communication, analytical, problem solving, addressing dilemmas, ethical dilemmas. And then they're explaining how they award these marks. So for instance, here on communication skills, you can see you'll get 0 if you've not used the right format and if the information that you're presenting is not relevant to the audience. If we at least have recognized the format, 1 mark for appropriate format, but it's not well structured, it's not logically presented. So something like PESTEL we saw earlier, it's going to be logical. Go through PESTEL, that's logical, that will score a mark. If it's report format, 2 marks, because this is what you're aiming to try to do. Candidates presented the answer in appropriate formats, it was presented well to the audience, and it was specified. This is with regard to what the examiner was asking you, what was in the actual question requirements. Analytical, candidates demonstrated questioning of issues. They've been able to identify relevant facts in the case background. So this is again going back to that PESTEL, if we can identify what's important and making judgments or conclusions based on those actual facts. Have a little read through. I'm not going to read all the way through this, but again, before actually sitting your real exam, just have a little read here and look to see what HICPA are requiring. What I want to get into here is the big picture. So I want to show you guys the linkages that we have between all of these different areas in the syllabus. So Module 12, first of all, what are they testing? Well, they can test any type of organization. We can have profit-making organizations, so we can have manufacturers, we can have service, we just saw a restaurant business earlier. There can be an importer-exporter, or, quite rare, we can have non-profit making organizations. So we can have GOs, government organizations. We had many, many years ago a government hospital, or they could test NGOs, non-government organizations that could be charities. Doesn't matter what they are testing, all of these organizations are covered in the syllabus. With regard to strategic management, so this is what we cover first of all in section A. This is in this set 1 set of notes. This is covering chapters 1, 2 and 8. Let's have a little look here at what we mean by strategic management, and let's use levels of an organization to make these points clear. So what they can ask you about here is first of all planning, and they can ask for long-term planning. So when we start thinking about long-term plans, the key word to look for, the hint or the tip, is strategic. As soon as they mention the word strategic, it's long-term. They can ask us about a long-term plan. They can ask us about a short-term plan. Keyword there, operational. Yeah, so these are the terms we need to get very familiar with. Medium term, tactical. They can ask us to make long-term decisions. They can ask us about short-term decisions. They can ask us about long-term controls and performance measures. They can ask us about short-term control performance measures. In set 1, we're going to be covering all of these areas as we move through. And one crucial chapter here is chapter 1. This is where we start putting together our strategic plan. And we work through logically. We've just been talking about Pestel. Pestel's helping us analyze. Once we've done that, we can then start to make better decisions, so know which way to move forward. If we think about maybe COVID-19 in a restaurant, people aren't dining in, people are taking out. So maybe we need to start thinking about maybe improving our takeout business, maybe a website for ordering. This will allow us to make better decisions before implementing. So when we start to implement our decisions, this is putting this into actions. And when we start putting together here actions, the actions, we need to start thinking about the ethics. We need to operate integral, so honest, fair. We need to start thinking about objectivity, avoiding bias. All of this is going to be in chapter 15. We've got what's known as a code of ethics, always paying attention to our most important stakeholder, and that's the owners of the business, the shareholders. Then we've got financial management. So these are the rest of the chapters, chapter 3 to 7, 9 to 14, and 16. And these are not only tested in section B, they're also tested as well in section A. So the majority of our notes and the course is going to be spent on these more technical areas. Let's think about the linkage here. So let's say that we're thinking about a long-term plan. We are going to open up an online business. If we're going to do that, that's going to require money. Technology is not cheap. It requires lots of investment in hardware, software, staff, and support. So where's that money come from? Well, that's when we start thinking about our sources of funding. We can use long-term source of funds. This is corporate finance. We start looking at things like debt, bonds, equity, shares. When we start thinking about the corporate finance, we need to think about all the regulatory environment. So listing on the stock exchange requires lots of corporate governance considerations, regulatory requirements, and this one, ESG, environmental and social governance reporting. As well as long-term source of funds, we can look at short-term source of funds. So if we imagine our working capital, current liabilities, overdrafts, short-term loans, we're going to be talking about matching. Often you match the requirement of the finance with the need. So how long do we require the financing for? We also need to start thinking about the money, what's happening to the money. It's being invested in assets. We'll have long-term non-current assets. We'll have short-term current assets. And of course, we are thinking about risk management throughout, how we can manage the risks. A very important, very technical chapter is going to be our chapter 3. Let's finish off this introduction here, finally by doing a little bit of analysis of our past Module 12 papers. And first of all, you can see this set 1 set of notes, look, it's covering chapter 1 and chapter 2. If you look here, this is where it was tested, section A of the exam, and 3 is corresponding to the marks. A few years ago, strategy, chapter 1, chapter 2, very rare. And then here, you see this is when we moved into the Module 12, the new syllabus. This is QPB, before this is Module 12. And look, you can actually see that before we actually introduced Module 12, already HICPA were putting more focus on business strategy. I can tell you guys in the capstone exam, it's almost exclusively all based around strategy. Strategy comes first, everything else comes second. So once we've decided our financial plans, that are based on our strategic plans, what we want to be doing in the long term. Strategy comes first. So look, you can see here lots of section A's. Not exclusively section A, some B's here, but mostly section A. You can see chapter 8, performance in set 1 set of notes. Again, lots of A's, not exclusively A, some B's as well. You can also see here ethics, chapter 15, lots of A's there as well. So this set 1 set of notes, we're going to be spending time on the section A style. They're not too technical, they're not too tricky. But what I want to give you is some guidance as well. I want to go back to those hot topics that we had earlier on. So these are back on page, this was 4 earlier. Let's have a look at these. First of all, they are tipping chapter 2. Now, whenever they tip chapter 2, I also want to add chapter 1 because both chapter 1 and 2 are both looking at business strategy. They've tipped chapter 2 a couple of times when actually they've been testing chapter 1. So let's add that into our tips just there. Chapter 3, financial risk management, is a very technical chapter. It's financial risk management, that's hedging, forwards, futures, swaps. So we need to spend lots of time on that. Chapter 4 will be a chapter you're not very familiar with from university. This is looking at treasury management and relationships. We need to spend time on that. Chapter 6 is also tipped as well, working capital management. And I also want to add in chapter 7. Chapter 7 is never tipped in the hot topics. They don't need to tip it. It is the most popular area. We've actually only ever had one exam in about the last 15 years where they didn't test chapter 7. So that's extremely popular. We need to spend time on that chapter. Chapter 10, chapter 11, there's some relationship here. We're going to find out that chapter 11, this is called business combinations. What it's actually looking at is mergers and acquisitions. And there's a direct relationship. Whenever we buy a company, want to acquire it, we need to value the business. So that's going to be a little relationship there between 10 and 11. They're also quite popular chapters as well. You can see those have been tested a number of times. And then finally, we've got chapter 16. So this is a new chapter in the learning pack in the 2nd edition. This is our ESG. It has been tested before, it has been in the syllabus before, so we have got some past exam questions on it, but they've expanded it in the 2nd edition to have now its own chapter area. So we'll be looking at that later on. Now, if I've done this correct, there should be 9 chapters that we've tipped. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These chapters, you guys need to know inside out. And what I mean by inside out is, first of all, my set of notes, they are the most important. They are giving you the focus, the foundation. You must know each and every page. And then I want you to have a little read also of the learning pack. Don't ignore it. Although it's not exam focused, although it's not very well organized, you will find it is the official guide, and sometimes the examiner may test things from it that are not in my set of notes. My set of notes don't cover everything, like I mentioned earlier. If they did, they wouldn't be exam focused. But I do promise you, if you understand my notes, you can get an extremely good pass. But they may not cover everything. They might test something which is brand new, never been asked before, and that you'll often find is in the learning pack. So have a little read through each of the chapters. No need to read each chapter page by page by page, but certainly these tipped areas here, you need to know inside out, and the others, maybe just have a little skim read through. Just have a little look through anything that you're not sure about, anything that you've never studied before at university. Just have a little read of it and think about it. And then if they're asking you something which is new or very rare, you should then be able to score some marks on it. Because one thing I will tell you guys is this. These 9 chapters will not be the only chapters that are being tested. If you have a little look here at the top, I put number of chapters examined. And if you go back some years ago, 7 chapters, 5 chapters, 4 chapters, the range of questions wasn't too bad. If you look now more recently, look at the amount of chapters being tested. 10, 11, 10, 12 chapters. 12 out of 16. That is a big width of subjects. This is why I said to you guys earlier, don't skip. Don't question spot. You need to know each and every one of my set of notes. The last exam I thought wasn't too bad. That's why I was surprised a little bit about the pass rate. Only 9 chapters were tested just here. And as you saw earlier, Pestel, I didn't think that was such a difficult question. Some of the questions as well I thought were okay. But as I said earlier, I think the reason the pass rate was so low was because HRCPA are giving a signal out. They won't accept copying anymore. They want application. They want you directly answering the questions set. So that's our tips, that's our going to be our focus as we go through each of the chapters, but I'm going to be spending lots of time on each and every chapter. I won't be skipping, and neither should you. I think what we'll do now, let's take a short little break. So I'll catch you guys in our chapter 1, our first chapter. We're going to get into detail in a second. And so I'll leave you here with our little tips there. See you guys soon in our first chapter, implementing and monitoring business strategy soon. See you guys soon. Bye.